lesson is on what's called completing the square. This will be another method that we'll be able to use to try to solve an equation for x. First step, what we need to do is take half the b term. Now remember, in your equation, ax squared plus bx plus c, your b term is in the middle, so we need to take half the b term. With this example, half our b term is 6. Part 2, square that term that will find our c number. So 6 squared is 36. I take that squared number and I fill in the blank. That will then create my c value. Now once I have my c value filled in, I actually have a trinomial that will factor. X squared plus 12x plus 36 is now a perfect square trinomial, which can be factored into just one quantity, x plus 6 squared. Okay, so that's our goal. We want to try to be able to write it as one quantity squared. All right, so let's try these couple examples. X squared minus 2x plus c. Step 1, half the b term. My b term is negative 2. Half of that is negative 1. Take negative 1 and square that, gives me positive 1. I'll use that positive 1 to fill in the blank. X squared minus 2x plus 1. Now I can go ahead and write it as my quantity squared. The number that goes in that bracket is this half the b term. Negative 1 quantity squared, x minus 1 squared. Number 2, x squared minus 9x plus c. Half the b term is negative 4 1/2. Negative 4 1/2 squared, or if we write it as a fraction, negative 9 halves squared, 81 fourths. So 81 fourths is my b term. And now I can go ahead and write my quantity squared. X minus 9 halves squared. Done. Okay, now how do we solve our equation with that perfect square method? X squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 25. Now, this is already a perfect square trinomial. X squared and 16 are perfect squares. Remember your perfect square trinomial trick? X squared becomes x times x. 16 is really 4 times 4. If I multiply those two together and double it, do I get the 8 in the middle? The answer is yes. So this is already a perfect square trinomial. X minus 4 squared equals 25. Now my goal is to solve for x. So the first couple questions in your homework are in this category. All you're going to do is factor the left-hand side by using your perfect square trinomial, and then square root both sides. Square rooting cancels. X minus 4 equals. Here's where you need to remember that anytime you square root, you have both a plus and a minus. And your last step is now to move that 4 to the other side. And remember, when you add 4 to both sides, put it in front of your plus and minus sign. 4 plus and minus 5, which gives us 9. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 minus 5, negative 1. So my two solutions, x equals 9 or negative 1. Now in this next category, we'll actually be solving an equation, but now we have to do the completing of the square. So as you look at this first example, x squared minus 10x plus 1, 1 is a perfect square, but there's no way I could try to factor this. Two numbers that multiply to give me 1 that add up to give me 10. It doesn't work. Okay, so this is not already a perfect square trinomial. So we need to create the perfect square trinomial. In order for me to do that, I need to get that c term, that current c term, out of the way. X squared minus 10x, now leave yourself a blank here, that's where the correct c term is going to go, equals negative 1. Half my b term is negative 5. Now I can square the negative 5 to fill in the blank. That will be a positive 25. Now I just changed this equation by adding 25 to it. I don't have a balanced equation any longer. Whatever I do on the left, I have to make sure I do on the right-hand side as well. This is part of completing the term. Okay, so let's look back up here. Step 1 was getting the current c number out of the way. Half my b term, I did that, I got negative 5. Square that to fill in the blank. That gives me my 25. Keep the equation balanced. Add 25 to both sides. Now I'm ready to go ahead and factor. My left-hand side now factors into x minus 5 squared. My right-hand side, 24. Now I can square root both sides. Now I'm in the solving stage. So square root both sides leaves me with x minus 5 equals plus and minus the square root of 24. 24 breaks into two pieces, remember. Square root of 6, square root of 4, which is then 2 root 6. And now I can add 5 to both sides. X equals 5 plus and minus 2 root 6. And there's my two solutions. Now these next two examples are actually in your homework category. I pulled these out just so you know you would have some like it that you could refer back to. 3x squared plus 42x equals negative 24. I wrote this here as a hint. What you want to do first is take out what you see in common. 3x squared plus 42x plus 24 equals 0. We've got a 3 in common all the way across. X squared plus 14x plus 8 equals 0. Now I'm going to work my completing the square process. I need to move the 8 out of the way. X squared plus 14x, leave a blank, equals negative 8. Half your b term is 7. 7 squared is positive 49, but since I added 49 on the left, I need to add that on the right. Now I can write my quantity using that half the b term, x plus 7 squared equals, and then negative 8 plus 49, 41. Now we're ready to square root both sides. We're left with x plus 7 equals plus and minus the square root of 41, and then x equals negative 7 plus and minus the square root of 41. Number 32 is also one from your book that I pulled out. We've got a 7 in common all the way across, so we'll get rid of that first. T squared plus 4t plus 8 equals 0. We'll move the 8 out of the way. T squared plus 4t equals negative 8. Fill in the blank. Half your b term is 2. 2 squared is 4. Add 4 to the other side as well. Quantity would be t plus 2 squared equals negative 4. You're ready to square root both sides. T plus 2 equals square root of negative 4. Break that apart with your I term, plus and minus 2i, and then subtract your 2. T equals negative 2 plus and minus 2i. Negative 2 plus and minus 2i. A word problem. This is number 35 from your book. What you have is a rectangular box. Your dimensions are x and x plus 10. They tell us that the area is 50. We need to solve for x. Well, if we use the formula for a rectangle, length times width, we'll have x times x plus 10 equals area, equals 50. X squared plus 10x equals 50. Notice how I left a blank here? I want to use my complete the square method to try to solve for x. Half my b term, square that value to fill in the blank. Keep your equation balanced by adding another 25 to both sides. Write your completed factor, x plus 5 squared equals 75. Square root on both sides. X plus 5 equals plus and minus. Break this apart into two pieces. Square root of 25, square root of 3 becomes 5, root 3, and then we'll subtract the 5. X equals negative 5 plus or minus 5 root 3. Now we're dealing with an object. An object cannot have negative values. So here you're actually going to go back in and look for your number that's probably going to be extraneous. If we look at this and do negative 5 subtract 5 root 3, negative number subtracting another value is going to stay negative. So the negative value will be the extraneous piece. So what my answer will be is negative 5 plus 5 root 3. So if you wanted to use your calculator and come up with an approximate value for the square root of 3, times your 5 and then do negative 5 plus that value, you'll come up with your answer for x. If you want to leave that in your radical form, which is the exact form, you could do that as well. Question number 43, write the equation in vertex form and then identify your vertex. Y equals x squared plus 12x plus 37. Okay, so we want to try to write this equation in vertex form. Now remember, when we started this chapter, we looked at our three formats for parabola. The vertex form we're looking for is y equals a x minus h squared plus k. So we need to move this 37 out of the way. So we're going to do our complete the square method. To get this 37 out of the way, I would suggest you totally move it to the other side. Y minus 37 equals x squared plus 12x, leave a blank. Half the b term is 6, squared to fill in the blank is plus 36. But now that I did plus 36 on the right, I need to make sure I do that on the left as well. Plus 36. Now what I've got is y minus 1 equals, and I can do my factoring, use your half the b term, x plus 6 squared, and all I have to do is move the 1 back over to the other side. And I have an equation that is correctly written in vertex form, and I can now identify the vertex. Opposite from the inside, negative 6, comma 1. So my vertex form equation, y equals x plus 6 squared plus 1, gives me a vertex of hk as negative 6 and 1. One last question that we want to do here is number 62. Find the maximum height of the baton. Number 62 says, the drum major tosses the baton according to this equation, negative 16t squared plus 32t plus 6. We want to use the completing the square method and vertex form to find the maximum height. So think about what's happening. You have a baton being tossed up in the air. We're looking for that max height. So if we could do our vertex form, we should be able to know that value. H equals negative 16t squared plus 32t plus 6. Let's move our 6 out of the way. H minus 6 equals negative 16t squared plus 32t. Now the one thing with using completing the square is that you cannot start this if you have a number in the front of t squared other than 1. We've got a negative 16 there, so we have to factor that out first. H minus 6 equals negative 16 quantity t squared, and then 32 divided by negative 16, negative 2t. Now leave your blank and close the parenthesis. Half your b term is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is plus 1. Now stop yourself here for a second. What we just added in on that right-hand side is positive 1. We're not going to put just a positive 1 on the left, though, because this positive 1 is in a parenthesis. What is this positive 1 on the right-hand side really worth? Negative 16. So I have just changed this right-hand side by negative 16, which means I need to put a matching negative 16 on the left-hand side. Now I can go ahead and do my crunching together. H minus 22 equals negative 16. Now I can do my parentheses with my half the b term, t minus 1, quantity squared. And now let's move to 22. H equals negative 16, t minus 1 squared, plus 22. Now do we have appropriate vertex form? Yes. Now can you tell me the vertex? HK is 1, comma 22. So the maximum height is your k value, 22. Max height, 22, I don't see a value. I'm guessing feet, 22 feet. Okay, so there you have your completing the square process for trying to solve for x. Again, you'd probably want to put some of this in your cheat sheet for completing the square. but it's coming from vertex form. Vertex form is already on your cheat sheet as one of the three methods for solving your parabola.